Okay.
Okay. So hi, Karin. Thank you so much for joining us today. First of all, congratulations on the good news with the adoption of your second child happening this month. What have you got planned to celebrate?
Thanks, Nadia. Thanks for having me on. It's lovely to be here with you. Yeah, we're all quite excited in our family that we're finally getting to finalise our second one's adoption. It's been a very long road. So we'll be going to court, and we'll have some friends and who have been involved with our adoption process over what is 15 years come along and be part of it with us, and then we're probably going to have a lunch at a Filipino restaurant to celebrate our little one's adoption finalisation. So we go and celebrate and say, yay, part of the family, here you are. So that'll be great. Yeah.
How old is he?
He's just turned 9. So yeah, he's just turned 9, and he's been with us for about 18 months now. So he was 7 when I brought him home, and he was 7.5, almost 7.5, and he was 6 when we were matched. So yeah, it's been a long time, but we're finally getting to that point where we can go done and dusted with having to deal with the department and having to answer multiple questions that seem to be the same questions, just repeatedly asked, and get that out of the way and just get on with being a family, which we've been doing. But it's nice to have that feeling of not having to continuously chase the department to get the situation, to get the adoption finalised, and that we're not waiting on our local government, the federal government, and an overseas government, or more than one overseas government, depends on where you adopt from, to actually for them to go through their steps to finalise and get to the point where you can say, that's it, don't need to deal with that anymore, can just focus on what we need to do for our boys. So, yeah,
moving forwards, next chapter, which is fantastic for all of you.
Yeah.
You said 15 years. So you and your husband, you've got 2 beautiful boys. You are celebrating the second child's adoption, both from the Philippines. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the story behind that? 15 years is a long time, and you probably just so, you have so much experience and knowledge about this topic. What is the process, I guess, in a nutshell, with adopting children from overseas? So your story and then the process.
I suppose our story started, in fact, more than 15 years ago. Before Brendan and I even got married, we knew that it was quite possible that I wouldn't be able to fall pregnant. And so we'd had that conversation well before we got married. In fact, talking about what we would do and what was comfortable for both of us. And we never looked at going down the IVF route. That wasn't the path for us. And so we decided to do adoption. We had friends who'd adopted from the Philippines, so that was a fairly early decision that that's where we would adopt from. A lot of people go into international adoption not knowing which country they want to adopt from, but for us, and because my husband is a committed Catholic, it was in, it suited our path to go down that route of adopting from the Philippines. So we went to our first information session and seminar in the ACT. Oh, sorry, I suppose it'll be known that I'm from the ACT. So we went there in 2007, and around about this time of year, and went through all the processes, and then took us a while to get our paperwork in. And so initially it took us a little while to get stuff done. I was pretty busy in those days because of my job back then, because I was in the local assembly in the ACT. So that kept me busy, and it was like I made the decision that I wanted to focus on forming a family, and I didn't feel I could do that within the assembly, so I got out, and then eventually we got our life story done, which is, I remember you had to do, I think the questions were something along the lines of, please give us your life story. You can do it any way you like. However, we recommend that you answer these questions, and it, be no less than, I think, 5 pages and no longer than 10 pages. And it was like, okay. And then you answer all these deep and personal questions about your life, and what that involves, and, your relationship with your parents and your siblings, and how you will parent, and what you think about that. And so that takes a significant amount of time, and then you have to get references, and you put in the forms. And it's been a long time since I did it. Obviously, it's 15 years. But you have to think through a lot of the questions and how they'll be perceived by not just the people in the local adoption area, but also because that life story is fundamental to providing a picture of how you will do as parents. It then gets picked apart by the social worker. You have to have a social worker's report who goes through and does interviews with you. You have to do a psychologist assessment. That's when you're going to the Philippines and you do the testing that they require. And so it's quite invasive, but it's necessary. I understand the reason why they do that. They need to know that you're prepared for going down the path of adopting a child who hasn't been born to you, and knowing that what's involved with the trauma behind that there is a trauma for those children, that there's grief for those children, and preparing yourself, and how you'll deal with a number of the situations that come up with adopting children of a different race to yourself. So, so yeah, that's part of it.
Yeah. It is a thorough and lengthy process. However, it is unique in terms of, it's probably the only time where you do actually look and reflect on your life and answer those kind of questions. I don't think many people would have been given the questions that you would have been given, and actually had to think through, you know, what is my life? What were my parents like? How was I grown up? What sort of parent do I want to become? So yeah, I guess in that sense, it is a time for, you know, pause and reflection, and maybe a bit of insight as well. As lengthy and as thorough as it is, it's sort of giving them a full picture, but it's also giving you a full picture, or an idea of, oh, well, yeah, what sort of parent am I going to be like? And what can I provide these children? So I think, yeah, it's an important step. It's an important step. And not many, you know, not many people would ever look into it as deeply as that when they are having kids.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. And it would be it would be better for, you know, it would probably be better for us as parents, as well as our kids, if we were actually mindful of that and thinking about that sort of thing before we did go into the process of having children. But you can't force people to be mindful about their parenting style. And most people go into parenting and just go, oh, well, I'm having a baby.
Yep.
Okay, that's it. It'll be fine. And my children will never do X, Y, and Z. And they'll always, you know, do as I ask. And we'll always, you know, have, you know, no screen time and none of this and none of that. And they'll always say please and thank you and all, you know, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And always play nicely. But it's it is what it is. So you know, you get to that point, and I'm still my older boy, he's been home coming up to 10 years, and you know, every stage is different with children, and you're always learning. And I mean, for me, I think it's important to read and to do lots of listening and to do lots of um, to stuff on neurobiology and neuroscience and you know, how the brain works. And so you know, I'm a big fan of learning as much as I can to try to help me be a better parent with my kids. And I mean, especially, I mean, I remember when we were going through the process the first time around, and the social worker said to me, "Oh, well, this is how we'll do the sessions, and you know, I'll sit and I'll interview. I'll have a meeting with both of you together, and I'll ask questions, and then I'll meet with both of you separately. And Karen, I'll need to spend more time with you because of your family history." And it's like, oh, goody.
Wow.
Well, I mean, it's like it wasn't a huge surprise, but it's a little bit confronting, because I have a mother with mental health issues. I did need to actually focus on that and think about how that would impact me in my parenting of our children, and I'm glad I did. I'm glad I did. And I mean, I'm still working on that. I think it's a lifelong work. For me, I'm trying to be a better parent. I mean, not to say that my mother wasn't doing the best that she could, she was, but for me, you know, it's important for me to be able to model to my kids, you know, how to say sorry, and how to treat people with respect, but also, you know, have compassion for themselves as well as for others. and I feel that a lot of the reading that I've done and a lot of the podcasts that I listen to have helped to make that relationship between myself and my children and myself and my husband better. And that's not to say that there aren't days in which my oldest son has taken to saying that he wants to find another family, especially in the mornings when I'm trying to get him out the door and get him to school. But that's pretty normal.
Yeah.
Pretty normal. So
Yeah. Wow. Lots of growth, lots of awareness, and it's great. I just wanted to take it back. You mentioned, you chose the Philippines, one, because Brendan's quite religious in the Catholic Church, and yourself. Was there any other reason why you chose an overseas adoption as opposed to adopting in Australia? No? Is it not working?
Again?
Yeah.
Okay. It stopped for a second, but you're back again. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Oh, good. It didn't stop recording, so I'm hoping that we've kept all of that. Did you get my yeah, what are you thinking? Is it still?
Yeah, you're breaking up again, unfortunately.
Oh no. Oh, that's so sad. Let me I'm just waving it around.
It works when you're holding it up like that.
Okay. It's like, all right. Let me see. Are you there? Oh dear.
Oh.
Gosh.
Hello.
I'm holding it up now. Oh,
okay.
I'm so sorry. This hasn't happened. And I can't believe that I'm in Cairns. Like, you would think it's, a major city, and it's doing this on me. Yeah. Resilience. Persistence. Perseverance, I should say. Perspiration. I'm sweating.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it stopped recording. I'm hoping that's, we've got some of that content, because that was really good. Did you get my last question?
Was there any other reason we went international? Is that
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Why did you and Brendan decide on an overseas as opposed to an Australian adoption process?
Well, I suppose as I said, there was the fact that we have friends who had adopted from the Philippines, so we were familiar with that process. And at the time that we went through our first application, in the ACT, you could tick to apply for local as well as international. international, but it had to be one international country. And we did tick that box, but we were aware that the number of placements of local children was so low, and it's gone even lower since then. And it's up to, you have to be picked by, your file has to be picked by the biological parent or parents to go to for their child to go to you. And we weren't looking at, like, they were just starting to look at the whole permanent care process back then. They only just were starting to talk about it. So it wasn't really an option for us, and we weren't interested in going into the fostering process because we knew that we wanted to have a permanent family, and we didn't want to have that uncertainty for our family. We wanted to be able to say, that's it, we've finalised, and we're not looking at doing, I'm trying to think what I'm trying to say. We're not looking at having the possibility that the child won't be available to be with us permanently.
Yeah.
And permanency wasn't a big thing back when we started the first time around. And then for the second time around, we had a child from the Philippines, so we wanted them to have a sibling who was also from the Philippines.
Yeah.
Which is
makes
why
sense.
we went.
Yeah.
Which is why we went to the Philippines the second time.
Yeah.
So I do remember standing in the lift when we were it's like, in the department, and the admin person said, this was like, we were just starting the process of adopting a second time, and she said, oh, do you think you'll go a third time? And I went, if I get through this process for the second time, there's no way I'm going a third time. It's like, there is nothing that could, and that was before we'd gone through all the highs and lows of, what happened with the Philippines program, so which is a whole other story. So
wow. Gosh, sounds like a bit of an ordeal, but you've come out the other end, and November is the month to celebrate. So I'm really excited for you guys, family, and I can see the smile on your face when I mentioned that. So it's
thank you.
Like a marathon, isn't it? Oh no, it's getting unstable again.
It is a marathon. It's definitely not a sprint.
No. So what's been your experience having been involved in politics? What has that meant for you in terms of advocacy in the adoption, fostering, kinship care space?
Yes, well, I suppose the thing is that it makes me not scared to actually talk to the politicians and speak to people in the departments. And, I've been involved, both my husband and I have been involved with politics for a very long time, and we know a lot of the players. So I suppose I see it as being a means to an end, in terms of, being able to go and have a frank conversation and say, look, you've got a problem here, this doesn't work, etc., etc. But whereas some people just see it as, it doesn't occur to people to actually go and speak to their local member of parliament or their local member of the assembly in the ACT and say, look, there's problems here, can you actually assist? how much of a difference it makes. I'm still working it out. But so just because I was interested in the issue and personally involved, and having lots of friends in the international adoption space, and lots of friends who are doing fostering, long-term fostering, emergency fostering, emergency placements. There's a real need to actually go and be able to advocate for those people who are working in that area, as working is not the right word, but who are in that space and whose families, come together, whether or not it's a short-term thing and they intend for it to be a short-term thing, or whether or not they go into it with the plan to actually have a child come into their home and remain with them. So, yeah.
So you were in the political space, and then you decided to leave. But then during that time, you became part of the fostering and kinship of the ACT, and then later president of the association. And you also joined the Philippine adoption subgroup. Tell me about the support the association provides, and how important was it to find your community of people?
Sorry, I didn't get that last bit. Sorry, tell
me about the support the association provides, and how important was it to find your community of people?
Oh, yes. Well, I suppose I'd say you need to find your tribe. You need to find your tribe of people because the majority of people out there won't understand what it's like to go through the adoption process, and they won't understand the implications of on your kids, and what it means to actually have an international adoption, what that means for the kids, and the sorts of questions, and also the way that your kids might feel, and the fact that they will grieve their first families. And in my second son's case, it's not just grieving his biological family. It's more for him at the moment, because he was with a foster family, wonderful foster family in the Philippines. He grieves them as well, and that's more of a present grief for him, and it's perfectly understandable. I mean, if I'd been living with somebody for 5 years, and more than 5 years, and then get uprooted to another country, of course I'm going to feel a bit out of sorts about that as well. So some people might think that you say, oh, they should just get on with their lives. They're kids, they're resilient, they're kids. Well, no, they're not necessarily resilient. Not if you don't actually acknowledge that they're allowed to grieve the connections that they've made, the people who have been important in their life. For my oldest son, he's going through the process at the moment of he's particularly grieving his first mother, and we're talking about how to deal with that for him. And in a way, sorry, I'm just adjust this.
That's all right.
Sorry, my apologies to your editor. It's like, so he's going through that process of grieving his birth mother, and I mean, he's lucky. He has, well, lucky. Every time I say that, I go, no, that's not the word I want to use. He has a lot more information about his birth mother than many internationally adopted kids have. We've got photos of her. We've got a letter from her to him and to us. Yeah, so we have lots of photos of her which he can go and have a look at. But that doesn't take away the fact that he's lost, the person who he was not just with in utero, he was with for the first 14 months of his life. And without going into his story, that's a huge loss to actually have that situation. And it's important to say to him, that's normal. And, let's talk about how we can, maybe write her a letter and see if we can get that letter to her through a third party, which may be possible. But if not, then at least he's putting that down, because he's with the Philippines. It's there is no open adoption, so he's not allowed to contact her until he reaches adulthood, and so that is hard. It's hard for all of those kids. So going back to why it's important to find your tribe of people, people who will understand that you can talk to about that, talk through the ways that your children are grieving. And so we have our association has regular get-togethers for both parents and for the kids as well, different sorts of things. So the end of this month, we're going to have our annual general meeting as well as our Christmas event, and which is always great fun, getting together with kids and parents being able to catch up. And we do it out in an area just out of Canberra, which has got lots of activities for the kids, and it's lots of fun. And it normalises that. It normalises for those kids that they can come together, and they're not the only ones who are adopted, or they're not the only ones who are in foster care or permanent care, or they're not the only ones who have a family. They have enough. They may have their birth family who they get to see, get to contact, at contact visits, but they've also got this family who are growing them up, as Dara says in her book, We Love You Hundreds and Thousands. She says, the little girl says, it's simple, I have my family who gave birth to me, and I have my family who are growing me up. But because our kids don't necessarily get to see that mirrored all the time, they don't get to see that out in society, they may feel like they're strange, and they're not. It's just their situation is different to other kids in the class, but you need to honour their story and honour their history, and actually help them come to terms with what their story and their history is, so that they can be the best people in their own skin, be their real true selves, and feel comfortable in themselves. So, and that means all feelings are welcome, all emotions are welcome. So,
so that's, I guess, it's important to have these community groups, because for those children, bringing those children together with other children with the same commonalities of being adopted or in foster care, it does reduce, I guess, that stigma or feelings of isolation, or it probably allows them to communicate in different ways than they would with children who aren't adopted or aren't fostered. So it's important for you in terms of you know,
Mm.
having that as a community for you and going through all the trials and tribulations of all their children's stage developments and what they're going through, but also for them too, getting that extra support.
Yeah, that's right. And it's not even necessarily that they're going to want to have a conversation about about adoption, because they're kids, but the fact that they can go to an event and my oldest son, that's right, and just be a kid and go and play. And my oldest son has got a friend who's also adopted from the Philippines in Canberra, and he's got a few in Canberra, and he's got a few in Sydney area, and he can. We go to events, we go to camps, and we go to events down in the ACT, and he gets to see his friends and just play with them and be a kid, and he knows that he's not the only one who's like that. And the same goes for my younger son. And we went to, our association had for Foster Care Week, one of the things we did was we went to we had a fundraising movie, and at it, he said, "Oh, can I sit next to X?" And I said, "Of course you can, darling." And then after that, they've got, my younger son's been invited to come over and play Beyblades, and he's all excited because he gets to play Beyblades with his new friend. And then during the school holidays, his new friend said, "Oh, I'm having a Beyblade tournament, and you can come over." And it's like they had a Beyblade tournament, and he won this little cup because he came third in the Beyblade tournament amongst all these other kids. And it's like, and that's great, and some of them are fostered or adopted, and some of them are just friends through school and whatever. But it's just going and being a kid, but also knowing that you're not a freak show, I suppose.
I guess it's like that non-verbal communication, and just knowing that someone is adopted sort of makes you feel less alone. I only knew one person that was adopted, that was a next door neighbour when I used to stay at my foster mum's place. And when they told me, it was like, "Oh, really? Are you?" Oh, and that was the only person that I knew, but I kind of just latched on to her. We were the same age, and so I understand. It's not like we ever spoke about adoption. I didn't start chatting to her about anything, couldn't verbalize anything, but just knowing that person was the same as me, in the same kind of boat, then you kind of just develop a liking to that person. So it's good. It's good having those community groups for both adults and children. So your community group, it's called AKFFA.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which stands for Adoptive, Kinship and Fostering Families Association of the ACT and surrounding region, which is why we call it AKFFA, because that's a big mouthful. And I was talking about it with my brother yesterday, and he was like, he said, he says, "It describes it all, but it really is a mouthful." I went, "Yeah, that's why we call it AKFFA." Or I call it the association. So, but so
there's a bit of a delay, I think. So, so you, with AKFFA, you became president since the end of 2015, but you had been kind of a part of that committee for a few years prior to that, and it recently organised and ran a trust-based relational intervention workshop from the Karin Purvis Institute of Child Development. Can you tell me about this workshop? Because I know we've been speaking about this for a few months now, and I'd love to hear how it went.
Yeah. So trust-based relational intervention, or TBRI for short, was started by the Purvis Institute of Child Development. So Dr. Karin Purvis and Dr. David Cross from the Texas Christian University started this model, and it started out of they wrote a book first called The Connected Child, and the TBRI model, well, the name of the trust-based relational intervention came about, my understanding is just after the book came out. It started from Dr. Purvis she ended up doing a lot of work with families with internationally adopted children. So both she and Dr. Cross are psychologists, child psychologists, and so they ended up doing that together, and they had a camp called the Hope Connection, I think it was called, in which they modeled this sort of thing. So it's really big in the United States, and it's a model which is based on connected parenting. And for me, we had a TBRI practitioner run it. So he's based in the Newcastle area, but he came down and ran it for us because he's got one of our members is his sister, and she's also a social worker. So she'd said, "Oh, would you be interested in having this run?" And I'd been keen to have it run for a few years since I'd started looking into it, and I'd read The Connected Child, and so it looks at how the implications of trauma on the brain, and especially on a child's developing brain. And the Connected Child came out in 2008, I think. There's been a lot more books published on this by people like Dr. Bruce Perry and Bessel van der Kolk, and even Mona Delahook talks about it in her book as well, and Dr. Dan Siegel and Dr. Tina Payne Bryson, they also talk about this stuff in their books. So, but what it talks about, so the amygdala, which is part of the reptilian brain, is actually, it's like the smoke alarm in the brain. And if you've been through trauma, so what happens is that the children who've been through trauma, their amygdala is larger, and it can be up to 4 times larger than a normal amygdala. So they're much more likely to overreact, and which means that you need to actually reframe the way that you actually parent your child to take into account their trauma. And it has real implications for them in the classroom setting, and in their relationships with other kids, and re-establishing that connection so that they have that sense of felt safety within in their reptilian brain, because the reptilian brain can't tell time. And that's what Dr. Bruce has done a lot of research on. So, and it's come about, there's been stuff about it to do with PTSD, where they've established, it doesn't actually, the reptilian brain can't tell time. So, for example, if you have PTSD and you're a war veteran and you hear fireworks going off or a bike backfiring, your downstairs brain just goes into fight or flight, and that, so you've got no control over what your reactions are to that situation, because the reptilian brain has taken over and the frontal cortex just loses all, there's a loss of integration. Anyway, that's that's my understanding of it anyway. So for me, I felt that it was important. I've done a number of, I've done the TBRI course a few times online, but I wanted to have it available for our members so that we could start talking about it, and understanding the impacts for our kids on what, whether they're coming from the foster care community, whether they're coming from kinship care, or if they're coming from, if they've adopted internationally or adopted locally. You need to be able to, connect with them to actually give them that felt safety. Empower them to address their physical needs. So, making sure that they're hydrated and that they're properly getting proper nutrition, etc., etc. So it looks at all of that and all of the implications of that. So that was a bit rambly, but yeah.
No. I think this trust-based relational workshop is just super interesting. And yeah, I'm sure you've just got a lot more to say about that as well. Is there anything else you want to add about that workshop?
Well, it was because we had a mixed group of people at the workshop. So for some people, they'd already done similar training through there's the Circle of Security workshop, which is a lot of families in the foster care community in Australia have done Circle of Security, which is also based on that brain-based science and looking at how to actually provide that circle of security for children, so that they learn to know that their needs are met, and that when they cry that they their needs are met, and they have that connection. So there's a number of diagrams which I can point you to, and I might actually send you one from the TBRI, and it's got a video which shows how when the baby cries, the caregiver comes, comforts, and the child learns that they have a voice, but and that's where you have and this leads to this is coming out of Bowlby's attachment theory stuff as well. So when the child learns that they have a voice, they're securely attached. And as a caregiver, I think the estimate is that even the best caregiver in the world will only be attuned to their child for about 30% of the time. So, but because you're repeating the actions so many times, the child needs to be fed, so you feed the child. The child needs to, be changed, so you change the child. The child needs to be, soothed and, provided a safe place to sleep and kept safe. And you provide those things, and you do that, thousands upon thousands of times for an infant. so, you know, the child cries, you come to the child, they learn that they have the voice. Child cries and nobody comes, or somebody comes and they yell at them, or, you know, or you know, they jeer at them, or, you know, they laugh at them, or they abuse them physically, or in whatever way, then they don't trust their voice. And, you know, the so for I mean, the whole thing about attachment, and I think you might have had some discussion about the attachment theories in one of your podcasts with I can't remember, but so that there's different types of there's securely attached, and then there's insecure attachment. But attachment is something that all children are seeking out, and how they get that back impacts on how they grow up. So so for me, the whole thing with TBRI was, it's a start in terms of explaining to myself, and I'm continuously trying to learn more about this, but also to our other families. Anyway, and I'm happy to send through the link to the video as well, which shows the attachment.
Yeah, that would be great, and I can upload that, or I can
Yeah.
send it on my social
Yeah.
media. Yeah, that would be fantastic. Yeah, I think that's just really interesting for people to know about what happens on a physiological level, psychological level. Yeah, it just gives people a bit more of an understanding of how the brain works once after post trauma, post prolonged trauma too. So yeah, I think it's beneficial for me to share that with other people. And I'll also share all of the books that you have mentioned and the people that you've mentioned that can have a read of if they want to as well.
Yeah.
Great. So I'm assuming that, you know, over the last 15 years, you know a lot more now than you did back then. And I hope that things have improved over the last 15 years since you first started on this pathway. You know, not only just yourself, just continually learning and seeking out information, but having that information just there and those services being provided to people now who are maybe just entering into the foster care or adoptive space. So do you think that it has changed and for the better? What do you think there needs to be improvements? Big question.
It's a really huge question, and I wish I could say it had improved.
The stats prove otherwise, don't they?
They do, and I mean, there's, you know, that whole thing about the child learning that they have a voice is so integral in this. I really feel like, I mean, in spite of the fact that, you know, government departments say, oh, well, you know, they're putting the child at the centre, and putting the needs of the child first. I often think that, you know, it doesn't work out that way. That children are treated as though they're an attachment for, you know, they're owned by their family, whether it be birth family or otherwise, and that it's because the adults, are the ones who have the voice. The voices of the children are being ignored. And if government departments want to keep children with their biological families, they need to actually show how they're actually supporting those families. Not just show, but actually do. And that means providing long-term support to break the intergenerational trauma that's occurred. I mean, if you've been brought up and you've been bounced around the foster care system and then you end up having a child yourself, it's more than likely that you'll have the child taken off you at some point, or that you won't know how to help your child be the best person that they can be, and help yourself be the best person that you can be. The whole terminology of best interests of the child, I think, is used by government departments a lot of the time to justify their predetermined end result. And I don't think that they are necessarily putting the best interests of the child at the front of their minds. So
what is that predetermined end result? Just it resulting in foster care and not so many permanent cares or adoptions, or reducing not as many access to services.
Well, I think it depends on where you are in the country, but because of the and this comes back to politics of the situation as well. So ultimately, the government departments and ministers respond to negative articles in the media about children being in out-of-home care, but they don't necessarily look at the situation of the stability of that care, the permanency of that care, and they treat it as though it's a black and white situation of, the child either is in out-of-home care or they're with biological family, and that it can't be anything in between. And they have this attitude that children are worse off if they're not with their biological family a lot of the time, so they keep returning them to family until it gets to a crisis situation. But when they return them to biological family, what supports are they actually giving to that biological family? You
there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yep, I'm back. So you're saying what supports?
You're breaking up a lot.
Oh, am I? So would you say what? Are you there still? I can sort of view.
No.
So we're pretty much all the way through.
How are we now?
We're pretty much all the way through. You just mentioned how do they support that biological family once that child does return into.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. That's where you're up to.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. So I just wanted to just say what you had said in the as part of your answer.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see government departments want to have less children in out-of-home care. They need to start working on strengthening the original family. What are they doing to break the cycle that's leading to children being removed? And what are they doing to identify at-risk families and provide them with the support they need? And also, when are they going to give these children a voice, a real voice? Children are not possessions of a family. There is a lot of lip service being paid to best interests of the child, but at the end of the day, the claim is used to come to a predetermined outcome, which you've mentioned. And it continues to cause trauma, and much of it's intergenerational. So seeing all governments address the issue of how to break the cycle of intergenerational trauma.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to find where I've. Sorry, did you want me to read that so that? Or did I said because I?
It's a great answer.
Yeah. Yes, I was. It was obviously my inspired bit at 12:30 in the morning. So
yeah, maybe read it out and we'll see if we can use it and slot it in somewhere. Like maybe do it like candidly.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll ask the question and you can answer it in your way. So I'll say there has always been like such a vigorous public discussion about adoption and out-of-home care in Australia, however minimal platforms. From your experience, what do you think would be some key recommendations to discuss that could be submitted to government?
Sorry, bear with me. I'm just finding my glasses. So, well, I suppose the thing that I would like to see is if government departments want to have less children in the out-of-home care setting, then they really need to start working on strengthening the original family. What are they doing to break the cycle that is leading to children being removed? What are they doing to identify at-risk families and provide them with the support that they need? And also, when are they going to give these children a voice? I mean, a real voice. These kids are not possessions of anybody. They're not possessions of family. There's a lot of lip service being paid to the best interests of the child. But at the end of the day, I think this claim is used to come to a predetermined outcome. And it has and continues to cause trauma, much of which is intergenerational. I'd like to see all governments address the issue of how to break the cycle of intergenerational trauma.
Yeah, perfect. All right, well, we'll end there. Thank you so much for your time, Karin. That's amazing.
That's okay.
Thank you so much for this episode. Yeah. Really appreciate it. Appreciate your input, you sharing your story. It's such a powerful story, and and congratulations again, and enjoy this month, and and we'll touch base again soon. I really hope that that when I press stop on this record, that it's recorded the whole, like everything. I will let you know though. All right, I'll go and I'll just check the files. Yeah. I'll talk to you soon though. Thank you so much.
Sorry. So can I just say one other thing? So
yeah.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, can I just say one other thing, or are you going?
No, tell me. Yeah, go for it.
No, we're frozen again.
Oh, tell me. Can you hear me? Just speak. Just talk. I can hear you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you. Oh, I can. Okay. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So just in terms of, there was one thing that I wanted to mention. Yeah, I can. Yeah. So there was one other thing that I when we were talking about, and I was talking about finding your tribe. So often when families bring their kids home, they really need that extra support. Because the kids who come from a background of trauma, even if it's not, kids deal with things differently, even if it's not obvious. So it's not just finding community groups like ourselves. There's a lot more resources online, and one of the places that I would recommend is there's a podcast called Parenting After Trauma by Robin Goebel. And she's got, that podcast is great. So I'll send the link for that as well. But she's also got a website with stacks of free resources on it. So she, there's including ebooks on what behaviour really is, and, another ebook on the brilliance of attachment. And she's done lots of video presentations on that stuff as well. So she's definitely a resource. And that sort of stuff, nobody was talking about that when we first started. And there's so much which has come out in the last couple of years, even since the since COVID started. There's been a lot more podcasts which have started, so which are fantastic. So definitely recommend Robin Goebel, and happy to give more recommendations for you to put up on the Facebook site as well if you want. So
great.
on your
Thank you.
social media. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your input today, and your and everything that you've shared today. I'm sure all of our listeners will really appreciate what you've said and contributed. So thank you. And we'll touch base.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Yeah, I'll let you know.
Fingers crossed.
I'll let you know. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, Nadia.
All right.
Okay. You
Bye.
go and have a swim.
Yeah. I'm gonna.
Bye.
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 Bye.